You're welcome to today's video. Today's video, we're going to be looking at second language acquisition. We're also going to be looking at some factors that affect second language acquisition, such as internal factors and some learner external factors. Finally, we are going to study some early SLA theories, and we're also going to try to understand their interactions when it comes to the factors affecting second language acquisition. Now, I need you to sit back, take out your pens, take out your papers, and I'll see you at the end of today's video. Second language acquisition, SLA. Recommended texts. Ward Ellis, 1997. Second Language Acquisition. Oxford University Press. Ward Ellis, 1994. The Study of Second Language Acquisition. Oxford University Press. What is SLA? SLA refers to learning a second language after a first language is already established. It means the conscious or unconscious acquisition of a foreign language in addition to the mother tongue, MT as abbreviated. Hence, it can be referred to as L2, which is the second language, language 2, L2 acquisition. SLA is often called sequential language learning. It is a subdiscipline in applied linguistics, and we must understand that its central theme is what we refer to as interlanguage. Now, as we proceed in our teachings, we'll get to understand what exactly interlanguage is all about. Now, the goal of SLA studies is to investigate how individuals learn different languages other than their mother tongue, or L1, which is the language acquired naturally from birth. And such a language is innate or inherent. That's why we refer to it as the mother tongue, or L1. Now, before we proceed, I want to say that at this point it is crucial to understand the differences between the notions of learning and acquisition. Okay, they mean two different things, but when it comes to SLA studies, it is often better to use acquisition. Now, while acquisition means implicit, okay, acquiring a language is implicit in the sense that it is done indirectly, okay, as opposed to learning that is explicit, which is a more direct action, and it is clearer that you are trying to learn or achieve something. Acquisition is subconscious, that it is involuntary and it is unintentional, as opposed to learning that is conscious and intentional. It is deliberate. Acquisition is often done in an informal situation. Okay, the situation is casual, it's more relaxed, and it is you are more familiar. It's a more familiar environment in which you acquire that language, which is opposed to learning where we have a more formal situation that is instructional. Acquisition uses grammatical feel. What do we mean by that? Okay, now when a learner is acquiring a language, and there's a certain stage he will get to that he will just feel that he's grammatically correct, as opposed to learning that uses grammatical rules. Number five, amongst others, we have the fact that acquisition depends on attitude. Okay, it depends on the individual approach, and your attitude can either be negative or positive, or you might have indifferent feelings towards achieving your goals, as opposed to learning where it depends on aptitude. Okay, by aptitude, we mean competence and ability to acquire the language. Okay, so these are the differences you need to know concerning acquisition and learning so that you know that there's a clear demarcation between these two concepts. Now, studies in SLA focus on describing linguistic usage. What do we mean by linguistic usage? By linguistic usage, we mean an aspect of performance showing to what extent a language user demonstrates knowledge of linguistic rules, okay, whether it is phonological, whether it is or grammatical systems. It shows your mastery of the linguistic rules, as opposed to use. When we talk about use, then we are talking about communicative competence. Okay, that's why we have here long and parole. We have the long, which is knowledge of the language, and we have the parole, which is the concrete use, the aspect of performance showing to what extent a language user has the ability to use the knowledge of linguistic rules effectively to communicate. Okay, so studies in SLA focus on both long and parole. In other words, focus on both linguistic usage and communicative competence. Therefore, there is the characterization, the description, and explanation of a learner's underlying knowledge and his ability to use this knowledge competently. So this is the focus of SLA, having the knowledge and the ability to use that knowledge competently. Many learners are multilingual. Now, this is said in the sense that they have acquired competence in several languages other than their first language or their mother tongue. In other words, they have become proficient in more than one non-primary language. Okay, so they have a primary language for communication, but they have acquired another language. That's why there are instances where we make distinctions between a second language, a third language, and sometimes a fourth language. Now, the label second is therefore used to denote any language other than the first language. A dissimilarity is often made between second language acquisition and foreign language acquisition. So we have SLA and FLA. On the one hand, in the case of the former, which is SLA, the language performs an institutional and social function in the speech community. That is, it operates as a conventional and recognized means of communication. Okay, so once you have SLA, then it means that that language is functioning as a recognized language. It's used in different aspects of the society, different social gatherings, and it's most times their official language or one of their official languages. Now, this is opposed to the latter, which is foreign language learning. It occurs in places where English does not play a major role in the society. However, it is seen as being predominantly learned only in a classroom. Now, we have instances of foreign language learning in countries like France and Japan. They are examples of foreign language learning countries. We must understand that the acquisition of an L2 is considered to have taken place when it is used for the first time. Now, if you have your own language and you have been learning or trying to acquire a second language, and suddenly you find yourself using that language for the first time, then it is considered that you have acquired a second language. That's what we're trying to say here. Alternatively, when L2 is used to a high degree of proficiency, L2 is considered to have also taken place. Okay, so when you use it for the first time to communicate and your degree of proficiency is very high, then you have considered to have also, L2 has considered to have also taken place. Now let's continue. We must understand that the advantages of SLA outweighs the disadvantages. So I want to quickly itemize some advantages of second language acquisition. Now, when it comes to acquiring a second language, it improves an individual's cognitive abilities, okay, such as memory and the ability to prefer solutions to problems. You find your cognition being improved because your brain is being tasked in certain areas of problem solving issues. Okay, so the your cognitive abilities, they are improved. Then also, it provides avenues for the exposure to other cultures and the opportunity to interact with people from different climes. Okay, you interact from people, you understand their culture, and it becomes quite interesting when you discover how diverse cultures can be. It also encourages inclusion in different societies. For example, you travel to South Korea, you eventually learn how to speak their Hangul. You discover that somehow in your communication with members of that society, you have this feeling of being included because you can communicate. Now, in terms of SLA studies and research, our understanding of language learning and development is broadened. Okay, just like now we are learning about SLA, the advantages, how language is acquired. It is broadening our knowledge of language learning and development. Now we move on to factors in language acquisition. There are several factors in language acquisition, second language acquisition to be precise. We have internal factors and we have external factors. We quickly run through all of these factors, bearing it in mind that they are crucial for second language acquisition. Now, begin with the external factors. These are outside of the individual. Okay, when we talk about factors, we'll discover that we have the external that is outside of the individual. We also refer to external factors as social factors. These relate to the environment in which learning takes place. That external factors involve considering the role played by the social situation in which learning is taking place. Okay, so we have the case of a natural versus an educational setting. By natural, we mean family. By educational setting, we mean school. In fact, the entirety of the social environment has a major role in influencing the second language learner of English. Then we also have teaching strategies. Teaching strategies can also affect the way an individual acquires a language. There are several strategies that a tutor can employ when teaching, and if such strategies are not properly done, it can affect a learner. Okay, strategies can either create a positive or a helpful atmosphere. The strategies of a tutor can help students know that they are valued. Okay, it encourages them. You could also include a sense of humor in your strategy in teaching. It also helps an individual to acquire faster. Okay, so tutors on most occasions are often advised to make students feel more welcome, more at home by creating a sense of belonging. Also, another factor that could affect a second language learner of English or a second language learner in general has to do with access to native speakers, especially when it comes to the teaching of the oral aspect. Okay, access to native speakers could also hasten the learning process of the second language learner of English. We also have motivation from school, from the society, from family members, and just motivation in general from outsiders, from your friends, and all of that. Okay, it could also enhance, it could also help a second language learner. Finally, we have the learning curriculum that is being used to help the learner should be all encompassing to meet the learner's language needs. That is, an appreciable level of language proficiency can be met if the learning curriculum is rich. All right, so these are all the external factors and some others that could affect the second language learner of English. All of these are outside of the control of the learner and are different for each individual. So depending on where you find yourselves, your factors can be different. Your environment, different family, school, all of these strategies, teaching strategies can all be different depending on your environment. Now we'll move on to the internal factors. The internal factors are the innate factors. These are those factors that the individual language learner brings with him to the learning situation. Okay, they are the factors the learner brings with him to the learning situation. The first one is age, the idea of age. The earlier you begin learning a language, the better, because of what Lerneberg proposed a hypothesis, the critical period hypothesis, and it says that optimal time for language acquisition is at a very early stage, okay, which terminates at birth. Now, at this early stage, the learning is effortless, the learning is easier, and the learning is seamless. So we see a connection between age and the effortlessness of language learning. And we must understand that the outcome is usually native like. Okay, so when you see children learning a language at an early age, they become like native speakers. Number two, we have cognition, which is also intelligence or IQ. Now, the greater the cognitive abilities or intelligence in language learning, the faster the ability in learning. This innate language ability is what Chomsky refers to as language acquisition device. Okay, it's stronger in some students and not as strong in some other students. Now, LAD was proposed by Noam Chomsky in the 1960s. It is the mental capacity that enables an infant to acquire and produce language. Now, this internal factor also plays a major role in innate language ability to acquire a new language. Now, we move over to motivation. Motivation can either be intrinsic or extrinsic. What do we mean by this? Intrinsic in the sense that you can motivate yourself, and extrinsic because others can motivate you. For example, you can motivate yourself because you are taking pride in personal progress, and extrinsic because probably there's the need for you to get a placement in an American university or a Korean university, and you have to put in effort in learning a new language. Okay, so you have to motivate yourself. or something else has to motivate you. This is also an internal factor. Okay, then we also have experiences. Your experiences has to do with your personal exposure to various languages, cultures, and countries. Depending on how far you have traveled, how well you know certain cultures, it could enhance your acquisition and help you to improve on your language faster. Okay, then we have your personality. Now, your personality has to do with your whether you're an introvert or whether you're an extrovert, and whether you are more exposed to making mistakes and you don't mind. Now, when you are an introvert, it's quite difficult for you to progress as fast as an extrovert. Okay, so personality has to do with your self-esteem. It has to do with inhibition. If you have a high self-esteem, it's most likely that you lower the walls of your inhibition and the greater success in learning compared to where you have a low self-esteem. The higher the walls of your inhibitions, and there will be likelihood of less success in learning. Then we have your attitude. It has to do with either expressing positive feelings or negative feelings during the process of language learning. Last but not the least, we have aptitude. This denotes a high language aptitude or skill. Okay, when we talk about aptitude, then we are referring to the natural ability towards language acquisition. Some people have a very high aptitude, while some may not have a high aptitude. Okay, it has to do with how quickly and how fast that you can acquire or learn a new language. Finally, we have the learning styles. This suggests cognitive or mental styles of learning. We have different styles of learning. There are some people that you will need to speak to them, and when they hear, they understand better. There are some other individuals that are called kinesthetic learners. Okay, they find themselves remembering things better if they are associated with pictures. Okay, then we have this group of learners that are called visual learners. Okay, visual learners, I beg your pardon, visual learners, they learn faster when whatever they are learning is associated with pictures. But when it comes to kinesthetic learners, they are learners that feel that writing down words and sentences help them to remember. Okay, so we have audio learners that feel that they have to hear and listen and they immediately grasp what you're teaching them. We have kinesthetic learners that have to put down everything you're saying. And finally, we have the visual learners that must where you must associate what you're saying with pictures. Okay, so these are all the internal factors that affect second language acquisition. Okay, they all affect second language acquisition. So I need you to take note of the differences between these factors so that you don't get them all muddled up. Now I want to quickly look at early theories in second language acquisition. There are some theories. We're going to be looking at 4 of them. Okay, several theories have been put forward over the years explaining the process of language learning or acquisition. We're going to look at 4 of them, and we're going to begin with behaviorist theory or behaviorism by B.F. Skinner. It was proposed by Skinner. The behaviorist theory. The central idea here is that children imitate adults. Okay, children imitate adults. In other words, there is habit forming or habit creation. It's an explanation as to how language acquisition occurs in humans. Now, Skinner explains using the notion of stimulus, response, and reinforcement, such that the reinforcement could either be positive or negative. What does it mean? It means that once you stimulate a child, the child responds and you reinforce either by rewarding that child. Okay, but once a child does not imitate properly or correctly, the child is not rewarded. Okay, such that you are now motivating the child to do the correct thing, such that reinforcement is either positive or negative. Now, this theory greatly had a significance on second language pedagogy, where children it was impressed upon them to imitate adults. However, this theory was strongly criticized. It was criticized as being too defective with respect to the rule governed nature of some languages. Okay, some linguists felt that imitation is insufficient in working out the structural rules of a language. Okay, because there are some children that can produce what we refer to as intelligent mistakes or virtuous errors. For example, the past tense of drink, of course, is drank, but a child can make an intelligent mistake by adding ed because he has already known that the addition of ed indicates past tense. So that's an example of a virtuous error. So this theory was criticized. Now, apart from the fact that virtuous errors can be made, Skinner's theory was also criticized because there are some adults or caregivers that are not even proficient in that language. And when children imitate them, they produce errors. Okay, so Skinner's theory was strongly criticized. Now we have the innateness theory, which is also known as nativism by Noam Chomsky. This theory was a critical response to Skinner's behaviorism, and it was focusing on the impoverished language inputs children received from adults. Just like I said earlier on, okay, adults cannot, they are not able to give them the entirety of a language, such that its children now became impoverished in their language input. Now, the central idea here is that a child's brain contains special language learning mechanism at birth. They have an inborn capacity for language acquisition. And now this takes us back to what I said earlier on about the language acquisition device. That is, language acquisition is biologically determined. The natural predisposition for a child to interpret what he hears through the language acquisition device. Now, of course, Chomsky's theory was criticized majorly because he didn't use children as examples. He was not able to actually use children as samples. Theory was faulted, actually. It was faulted and seriously criticized as being too theoretical, and also suggesting that he did not study real children. So the idea of being too theoretical was a major issue with Chomsky's innateness nativism. Number 3 is cognitive theory by Jean Piaget. Piaget placed acquisition of language within the context of a child's mental or cognitive development. Now, the idea here is that a child being able to understand the concept before they acquire a particular language form which expresses that concept. Therefore, learners actively form their understanding of the language, easily grasping the language. So what he's saying, this theory is saying, is that there must be an understanding of a concept before that concept can be applied to a particular language form. Now, the emphasis in this theory is therefore the functioning of mental processes in relation to attention, memory, and learning strategies, which is encoding, storage, and linguistic information retrieval. So we see the functioning of both internal and external. Once a child has an understanding, you see, a child's mental cognitive development, he has an understanding of a concept, he can now put that concept in form, he can now apply it to a form. Okay, of course, this theory was also criticized as being limited because as a child continues to develop, it becomes difficult to find a link between language and intellect. Now, what do we mean by that? It means that if Piaget is suggesting this theory, how do we now account for mentally impaired children that can speak fluently? Because Piaget is saying that a child's mental cognitive development has a role to play. But how can we account for a mentally impaired child that can speak fluently? So this theory was also greatly criticized. Of course, there's no theory that is not criticized. I'll have some critics. Finally, we have the input interactionist theory by Jerome Bruner. Now, this theory stresses the importance of language inputs received from caregivers. Okay, so in a nutshell, we are saying Jerome Bruner is saying nature versus nurture. He is proposing a combination of a child's ability to learn language in addition to what the caregivers or what the parents also impute. So we see a child's ability plus social interactions. Now, this suggestion here is adopting child-directed speech, CDS, often described as scaffolding. Okay, that is naturally nurturing children into acquiring a language. The combination of the ability of the child plus effort made by caregivers or parents. That's why we have nature versus nurture. Now, in response to Chomsky's LAD, Bruner coined the term LAS, Language Acquisition Support System. Okay, so Bruner is saying that children need support. In addition to Chomsky's LAD, children also need support. Okay, in explaining the significance of social and cultural environment in enhancing child language acquisition. So Jerome is a combination of both social and cultural environment in addition to a child's language acquisition device. This theory is limited. It was observed as being limited in the sense that it's not essential since children in all cultures pass through the same stages in language acquisition. Now, having looked at what second language acquisition is, and we're able to look at the factors affecting SLA, the internal factors, the external factors, we're able to also look at some early theories in SLA. Of course, there are other theories, but we're just able to touch 4 early theories in SLA. Okay, having looked at all of these, there is a crucial question that often arises. There's a crucial question that often arises. Now, discussing the interactions between SLA theories and learner internal and external factors affecting language acquisition. SLA theories and factors affecting language acquisition is very crucial to the understanding of the concept of second language acquisition. Now, what is the interrelatedness? If we're saying these two areas are crucial, the interactions between linguistics the interaction between second language theories and learner internal and external factors to language acquisition. It's a very crucial question. What is the interaction? Welcome back. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye.